collective. Oh, I thought we were going one by one.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
so
don't do one by
I can
one.
do a little introduction, right? So this is Circus Voices Team Edinburgh Festival Fringe 2018, and we have just come out of Egg by Paper Doll Militia, which is performed by Sarah Beebe Holmes and a guy who plays some instruments whose name I don't know. I'm sorry, I'll look it up later. And we're just at the start of our week, so we're going to start by just looking a little bit about what we enjoyed and why we enjoyed it. And is there anybody who would like to start?
I guess I can start. To me, it wasn't about the tricks. It was about the journey and the story that she told and the emotion. Like that's what I felt throughout this whole piece.
Cool. Do you think that you could speak up maybe a little bit? I'm not sure if that's...
Did you want me to say it again?
Yeah, sure. Say it again.
Okay. So for me, it wasn't about the circus. It wasn't about the tricks, although the apparatus and the use of the cellophane and the plastic, I think, had a lot of metaphorical significance. But to me, it was about the journey and her story and the emotions and, yeah, that it evoked in me.
I think coming off that, like the aerial that was used, yeah, it's really nice to not be looking for tricks and for it actually to really fit into the story and not feel forced or crowbarred in. And the equipment with like the tubes and the casing was all done really well, and the lighting, giving it that like medical feel or like a womb feel, just worked. It was really powerful imagery, especially in that room because it's round and it all fitted in with the whole womb thing, which was really cool.
There were kind of eggs everywhere, and I think about that thing that people say of when you want to get pregnant, you see babies everywhere, and it's interesting that the show is made by somebody who's given away her eggs, and there's eggs everywhere in the scenography of the piece, and I enjoyed that kind of attention to detail, and the same like all the props and all the apparatus being transparent, but kind of the sounds that they made and the way the light reflected off them gives them a aesthetic quality as well as a kind of meaning quality.
I mean, kind of building on what you're all saying. It is really, there's a lot of very powerful imagery, and the textures are so rich. Like even when I first walked in, I was already rooting for the show. Like I knew nothing about it. So when you said Paper Doll Militia, I was like, that's where I recognize her face from. Because I came in knowing nothing, right? So I walk in and I see these images, and it was already seducing me, and I was really rooting for the show because I'm always interested in something that's not in the mainstream, right? So I do appreciate them not using tricks as the focal point, and I liked the symbolism of the textures that they were using, and the consistency and the symbolism of the shoes, and how they were represented, and they were creating all these through lines with that. I loved that she brought the musician into it, so he's not just accompanying, but he's also a part of the story. So, I mean, there's a lot that I could talk about this already. And I think that it's very relevant. I mean, for a certain group of people, but I really think that this is something that's relevant. Like, people are dealing with this. I'm a person who had it out of accident, not having to go through that, but I think that I'm witnessing a lot with women my age, because I'm a woman in my 40s. My sister, people constantly dealing with this, and what's that like? So I think that this piece can speak a lot to other people.
It's kind of an invisible subject, like the detail of the medical procedures and stuff.
This is the power of the autoethnography, right? Because you suddenly have access to somebody's world that you would never really know, but by them saying them out loud and getting into the minutia, which, like, why would I ask you about? Tell me about your experience in the waiting room. But it's so revealing when you start really looking at the details of all of that. And it was so well done with like the music and how it played into the. Like, there's so many rich layers. I'm gonna say one thing, and this is a question that I really want to address myself because I practice it. So, but it's like there's a Smoke break. Smoke break. I have to deal with this myself. There's two things. It's like I believe in interdisciplinary and the power of that. But how do you reconcile circus and theater and not have this rupture that can happen because she has this certain way, and I would be interested in asking her questions about the choices that she made in integrating the circus part to it, because for me, when she starts pointing her toes and because she goes from very pedestrian into this sort of Vitruvian classic circus body that has the pointed toes, which when I'm in an obstetrician like this, I'm never pointing. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So I wonder like how do we start talking about this? Like how much research did she go into like trying to go into the dramaturgical implications for acrobatics?
I did notice she only performed acrobatics as Sarah, never as Kira, never as the doctor, only as Sarah. So
And,
Yeah.
and it was sort of as Sarah, but it was also sort of as this developing fetus that is from her but not in her, and it felt like that was like something that's prominent in her mind, even though she never spoke it out loud. Seeing those images time and again of kind of the floating sensation felt like in utero to me, kind of triggered like what I thought was a psychological comment on how she felt, and so that kind of change of mode didn't really bother me so much because I felt like it was adding something else on it, but it did make me think about how it's quite common in contemporary devised theatre now to have segments of dance choreography that is separate to the previous spoken performance mode, and people don't really comment on that so much anymore, and so maybe we're just at the beginning of that happening in circus, and people will stop commenting on that when it becomes more commonplace. I don't know.
I think it was integrated a bit, at least, like the theatre aspect and the circus aspect, and like right at the beginning when she had these troops, she was climbing, and she was still speaking over her shoulder, and maybe it was not telling the story directly, fearlessly, but she was still telling the story.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily feel like we need to be talking and doing something. There's something about it feels okay. Clearly, we're going into a circus section now. For me, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm always kind of hyper attentive to that. It's something I'm looking at when I see stuff like that, or it just jumps out at me. But I think that I would have questions about how she made those choices, because I think that there's a beautiful quality that circus can offer in terms of surreal. The surreal quality mixed with the more real quality of theater, where you're actually speaking and it has more real feel to it. So I'm just curious about the questions about how you approach that or whatever. Maybe that's the wrong approach for a critic, and that's actually a question I have about the process. It's like I find myself going into a dramaturg.
But that's
Instead-
your interest, and that's your place that you're coming from, so
Yeah.
it is totally relevant.
So I end up going like, how do I get out of the dramaturg into this other,
Well, then maybe you don't need to.
right?
Don't do something that's not interesting to you.
Right. It's natural, but I also want to question it.
Yeah. And is there anything else that anybody thought of that raised kind of questions or that they weren't so sure about?
I
There was one moment when I was not sure if the show was over and if she was speaking really just as herself in that moment about the process. And then it became clear gradually that she was the character of Carol. I mean, also she had the shoes on of Carol, but there was something different. And I thought, oh no, it's Sarah now, like not Sarah of the time that she was doing IVF, but it's like the end of the show and she's giving it
She
talk
addressed
about
us
how it
directly, didn't
actually,
she?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Was it just after a recorded speech? I remember there was a recorded speech where I thought like, oh, that's going to end now, and then it didn't.
Well, she said like, thank you for listening to my story. It was like the first time she actually completely addressed us specifically. So I was like, oh, is that the end?
I thought it was.
But it wasn't. It kind of brought me back in a bit. Quite good.
Oh, there was one thing that I was thinking that a lot of her portrayals of her younger self kind had a very flippant, naive quality to them.
I wrote down the word flippant.
And I thought she was going to more explicitly bring back something about how she now reflects on that naivety, and maybe she should have thought harder about some things that she didn't know about. Maybe putting that into the show was the way that she could say those things, because it's really brave subject matter to put in front of the audience anyway. So, but that was what I had.
Really relate to this character for Sarah.
Yeah.
Because it was like, yeah, she's kind of having the same style, like kind of not caring about things or not taking things seriously, but actually showing things seriously.
Well, she was transformed. You know, like that's what experience does. By you don't know something and don't know how to feel about it until you actually do it. And there's always like I feel that all the time. You know, so I feel that maybe she doesn't want it to be explicit. Maybe she wants the audience to like that, which is always a choice of hers. How much do I want to be explicit in my audience, and how much do I want them? Because I felt like it was just that she was transformed, and that's why there's a shift between them.
Maybe also why she's fake so
Yeah.
And it made me tear at the end. I'm like, I think I've had one day in Edinburgh so far, I haven't done anything. But like most of the way through, I was thinking, this is really interesting, because it's a touching subject, but it wasn't portrayed in a sentimental way. And then it was quite cathartic at the end to be able to have that little moment of feel a hopeful, nice thing.
Yeah, there was some really like I think that the moment like before she's gonna have the eggs taken out when she's on the surgical table, like I really a bit adrenaline rush. I'm quite scared of hospitals, right? So I was really relating to this moment. I was like,
Cool. Well, that's a good first chat. Thank you guys. Thank you, camera person.